And ladies of the jury, good afternoon. At this time, the people have an opportunity to present a rebuttal argument. Mr. Walgren.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I will be brief, ladies and gentlemen, but I do want to touch on a few things that were stated by Mr. Chernoff. First of all, let's be absolutely clear. We are here for one reason and one reason only, and that is because of the actions and the failures to act of Conrad Murray. Now, the cameras may be here because of Michael Jackson, but we are here because of the actions of Conrad Murray, because of the bizarre, grossly negligent, criminally negligent actions of Conrad Murray that caused the death of Michael Jackson. That is why we are here. So don't be fooled by statements of Mr. Chernoff that the only reason this case is here is because Michael Jackson. What Conrad Murray did has never been done before. You heard from the experts in this case. No one has ever seen propofol administered outside of a hospital setting, let alone in a bedroom, in a remote upstairs room such as what occurred in this case. No expert has ever heard of such a thing. This is not just kind of a deviation or an error in judgment. This is criminal, gross negligence, administering an agent that causes respiratory failure if not used properly, that causes death, and doing it as a one-man operation with no equipment, no safety measures, nothing. This has never been seen before. This is bizarre, unethical, unconscionable behavior. That is why we are here. Mr. Chernoff spoke about that somehow he said, I discounted the character witnesses. Actually, that's not what I said at all. What I said is I'm certain they believe every word they said. I'm certain their hearts were treated in a hospital setting with monitors and backup personnel, and they got the treatment they deserved. What I did say is that is in stark contrast to what Michael Jackson got from Conrad Murray. He did not have monitors or a team or a hospital setting, nor was he being treated for a heart condition. He was being treated for apparently insomnia, something of which Conrad Murray knows nothing about. What I did say additionally about the character witnesses is why didn't they call on a witness that was being currently treated by Conrad Murray instead of calling some from a decade past? But I'm certain when they were treated in a hospital with a heart monitor and backup personnel and all the care and the paperwork and the safety measures, I'm sure they did receive good care. That has nothing to do with the care or lack thereof given to Michael Jackson in this case. Poor Conrad Murray. Everyone is just working against him. They blame Alyssa Fleek. They blame Alberto Alvarez. They blame Dr. Schaefer. They blame Kai Chase. They blame AEG. They blame Randy Phillips, Michael Amir Williams, Fahim Muhammad, Arnold Klein. Everybody but Conrad Murray. Poor Conrad Murray. Remember back when they called Mr. Rubin to the stand, and they inquired of Mr. Rubin, what was Conrad Murray's demeanor like? Wasn't he grieving? Didn't he appear sad? Mr. Rubin commented on, yeah, he seemed, I don't remember what his exact words were, but he seemed that he was upset or whatever his exact words may have been. Because it's about Conrad Murray. How was he grieving? What were his emotions like? Poor Conrad Murray. Then I asked Mr. Rubin, let's talk about demeanor. Let's talk about grieving. Let's talk about what you witnessed. When Dr. Cooper was seen going into a room to talk to Michael's mother, Mrs. Jackson, and Mr. Rubin had to sit outside and hear the crying and grieving of a mother who just lost her son. But poor Conrad Murray, what was his emotional state? I'm certain he was grieving. He's responsible for taking the life of a man through his gross negligence. So Michael Jackson's to blame. Alberto Alvarez is lying. Alyssa Fleek apparently is lying. Steve Schaefer is a cop. Kai Chase failed to apparently, I don't know what, get security, or how this falls on her, I don't know. You have a medical doctor in the house who cares so little that he has not called 911, and defense counsel has the nerve to get up here and blame the chef in the kitchen, that she is somehow responsible. If allowed more time to argue, I'm certain they would figure out a way to blame it on Michael's son, Prince. Everyone is to blame but Conrad Murray. You know, if Alberto Alvarez wanted to lie or come up with some tale to, for unknown reasons, pin some case on Conrad Murray, he could have done a lot better than this bizarre saline bag with a bottle in it. He told you what he saw. He told you what he saw. And Alyssa Fleek told you that when she went into the Costco bag, she found the bottle inside the cut saline bag. But now it's a conspiracy between this coroner's investigator, Alyssa Fleek, the security guard, Alberto Alvarez. Neither one of them knowing that this bottle or bag has any significance whatsoever. But they're now in a conspiracy because poor Conrad Murray. Counsel comments on this, the bizarre bag. Why would the bottle be in it? Everything Conrad Murray did in his treatment was bizarre. He waited 20 minutes to even bother to have someone call 911. That is bizarre. He gave propofol to an individual every night in a bedroom for 2 months. That is bizarre. He lied to the paramedics about giving propofol. He lied to the UCLA surgeons about giving propofol. That is bizarre. Does it surprise you that he would have some unusual setup for the saline bag? Again, we don't know why it was set up that way. As I mentioned earlier, maybe it somehow hid it a little bit in case Michael's children came in. We don't know. We do know from Conrad Murray that Michael was sensitive to getting all the medical stuff cleaned up each day. But everything this doctor did was bizarre. None of it was consistent with a trained, competent medical doctor who was putting his patient first. Michael Jackson, it's his fault. It's his fault that Conrad Murray left him alone in the room. It's his fault. Did Michael Jackson, as I stated earlier, seek the propofol to help him sleep? No doubt about it. But there's a list of doctors that said no, because that would be dangerous and harmful. And there's one doctor that said yes. For $150,000 a month, yes. Poor Conrad Murray. Michael Jackson is dead. And we have to hear about poor Conrad Murray. And no doctor knows what it's like to be in his shoes. You've got that right. Because I have not seen a doctor in this case who testified that they would ever do what Conrad Murray did. Ever. Including the defense experts. Now, we didn't hear anything about Dr. White's science, did we? All the simulations, all his theories about the simulation and the urine, we didn't hear a word about it. Because, as I said before, it was junk science. Steve Schaefer came in here pro bono, no payment, and told the truth. He provided simulations. The simulations defense counsel ridicules, Steve Schaefer told you he rejected. He was giving you examples. He told you on the stand, before the defense even questioned him, that he rejected those simulations. The oral lorazepam. Steve Schaefer said that that would be possible as long as it was outside the 4-hour window. He didn't say that didn't happen. He said it wouldn't happen at 10 o'clock a.m. as the defense was trying to put forth in their hypothetical. He said that's impossible based on the absorption in the science. But it could have happened sooner, sure. And we don't know if it did happen, if it happened by Conrad Murray giving him some pills to help him sleep. We don't know. According to Dr. White, though, it would have happened when, again, Conrad Murray was out of the room once again. Conrad Murray is a medical doctor that assumed the care of Michael Jackson. It doesn't change because it's even in a more bizarre scenario of being in a bedroom. If he was a medical doctor in a hospital, in a clinic, in a surgery suite, he has a legal duty of care to monitor and ensure the safety of his patient that is under his care. The law recognizes this as a legal duty. Counsel talked about causation. Conrad Murray administered the propofol. Let's talk about direct causation. Had Conrad Murray not abandoned his patient, this wouldn't have happened. If Conrad Murray had monitoring equipment with alarms, this wouldn't have happened. If Conrad Murray knew how to effectively resuscitate a patient, this wouldn't have happened. But the law here, too, recognizes that it need be only a natural and probable consequence. If you administer propofol in a bedroom, a natural and probable consequence is there could be death. That is true. That is a fact. It's a respiratory depressant. It has unpredictable effects, as Dr. White said, as Dr. Schaefer said. It affects different patients in different ways. It's dependent on your fasting, how much food you ate, are you dehydrated, are there other drugs in your system? It is because of these variables that Dr. White spent an hour and a half talking about. It is because of these variables that you need to have the safety precautions in place. Because it is a natural and probable consequence that a patient would react to propofol in that manner. And it is entirely foreseeable and predictable. Dr. White, from the video I showed you earlier, would not leave a patient alone if he knew he liked to push propofol in that scenario. He would not leave him alone, because he knows what the natural and probable consequences would be. The issue, again, that Alberto Alvarez is lying. You know, if Alberto Alvarez wanted to lie, couldn't he have just said, I walked into the room and Conrad Murray was hiding bottles. Conrad Murray told me he fell asleep. Conrad Murray told me he had been in the other room sleeping and an infusion line killed Michael Jackson. I mean, if he wanted to lie, there's no evidence he had any animosity toward Conrad Murray. In fact, he thought he was, by all accounts, a fine doctor. Alberto Alvarez has no position in this case. This has been nothing but a nightmare for him. He told you the truth. For whatever significance the bag and bottle has to you as jurors, Alberto Alvarez told you what he found, what he saw. And Alyssa Fleek told you she found a bag with a bottle in it inside the Costco bag. What position does she have in this case? She's a coroner's investigator. She came in and told you what she collected and what she found. Detective Scott Smith told you he was in and out of the room taking photographs. He didn't see the bag removed. He saw it when it was laid out on the table. You can review your notes, review the transcript. He's telling the truth. He didn't see it in the bag. That's absolutely the truth. He said he was in and out, and when he came in, the bag was laid out and the bottle was on top of it. This isn't some master conspiracy between Alberto Alvarez and Alyssa Fleek and whomever else the defense would include in that. Another word about Dr. Schaefer. They characterize him as a cop, that he has an agenda. He provided all of his software to defense counsel so they could do any simulation they wanted. provides all of his data on the internet. He personally created scenarios, simulations for the defense at their request. You know, Steve Schaefer told you, I asked him when he was describing the infusion setup and the 2 lines. I said, well, isn't it possible that in that setup, with just a roller clamp and not an infusion pump, it's possible Michael could have reached up and undid the roller clamp? He said, absolutely, I can't rule that out. He said, absolutely, I can't rule that out. That's not someone with some agenda or trying to only put blame in one place or another. That's a scientist. Because he can't rule out that scenario. Now, it's people's position in that scenario. Defendant Conrad Murray's absolutely guilty for such reckless behavior, for such indifference. But Steve Schaefer, Dr. Schaefer, was telling you the science. It's no different than the oral lorazepam. No one can say, number one, if it was given categorically, but was it given at Conrad Murray's, handing it to Michael Jackson, giving him a cup of water? Was it done by Michael Jackson? That's all speculation. It's a fact that it's a controlled substance. It's a fact that it's gross negligence to leave someone in that condition, created by Conrad Murray through a night's worth of benzodiazepines and propofol, and then leave that patient abandoned to fend for themselves. But Dr. Schaefer told the truth. He gave you the science, and he told the truth. The issue of fingerprints. Alberto Alvarez's fingerprints were not on the saline bag. Michael Jackson's fingerprints are not on the syringe that he allegedly used. There's a whole list, if you go through the stipulation, of items that were clearly touched, were clearly handled. Empty vials, things of that nature, that don't have fingerprints. You don't always get fingerprints. It depends on oils, perspiration, different things. You don't always get fingerprints. But again, Alberto Alvarez's prints are not on the saline bag. Michael Jackson's fingerprints aren't on the syringe. You don't always get fingerprints. People's 30, we did get a fingerprint. And that's Conrad Murray's on the 100 milliliter vial of propofol that was found in the saline bag. You know, I read to you the instructions verbatim earlier, and one of the instructions was evaluation of defendant's statements. And when you evaluate the truthfulness of the defendant's statements, think about the deception and lies that have been told through numerous witnesses in this case by Dr. Murray. To Kenny Ortega commenting, Conrad Murray commenting that he was in perfect health, leave it to me, when Conrad Murray knew exactly the opposite was true. Same statement made to Paul Gongaware, that he was in good health, leave it to me, when he knew exactly the opposite was true. To Randy Phillips, to Kathy Jory, telling Miss Jory during their contract negotiations that Michael was in great health. No mention of anything that was going on behind closed doors. The email that you saw earlier to Bob Taylor in London, where he's commenting that any of these issues raised in the media are not true. To paramedics Seneff and Blunt and the other paramedics that responded, when Conrad Murray willfully denied them the information they requested and willfully denied and failed to mention that propofol was given. To Dr. Cooper and Dr. Wynn, when specifically asked what had happened, when specifically asked what had been given, and he lied. He didn't overlook it. That is insulting to your intelligence. He lied. He lied because there's consciousness of guilt, and he's looking out for himself. He lied to Tim Lopez, saying it was going to be the shipments were going to his clinic in Los Angeles. Defense counsel can't even understand the relevance of Nicole Alvarez's testimony. The propofol shipments, the 4 gallons of propofol were shipped to her apartment. Her apartment that was represented to Tim Lopez as a medical clinic. Surely, Conrad Murray must have lied to Michael Jackson when he ensured that he would be safe. Conrad Murray lied when he said that he insisted on an autopsy. You heard from Dr. Cooper. She said there was an unknown cause of death. It had to be an autopsy case. It had to be a coroner's case. Conrad Murray played no role in that decision whatsoever. Conrad Murray, when you look at his interview, says he got a social team together, a social welfare team, because he was concerned about the family. Dr. Cooper explained to you how that works. That's a UCLA protocol. It had nothing to do with Conrad Murray. Conrad Murray relays that he pulled Michael Jackson's mother aside and pulled his chair up close to her and asked if there was anything he could do. And she asked what happened. He didn't know. This grieving mother, still in one of the rooms at UCLA, just looking for answers after Michael Jackson had been pronounced dead. And he pulled his chair up close, those were his words, and he looked at Mrs. Jackson and said he didn't know. Poor Conrad Murray. Ladies and gentlemen, the law is very clear on the issues of causation. And the defense theory that Michael Jackson self-administered is not an unforeseen or extraordinary occurrence. Again, from Conrad Murray's own statement, he described Michael as having a dependency issue on this drug. He said Michael Jackson liked to push it himself. And he is the one that gave Michael Jackson the Valium, the midazolam, the lorazepam, and the propofol, and abandoned Michael Jackson. The people cannot prove exactly what happened behind those closed doors. As I stated earlier, Michael Jackson could give answers, but he is dead. But you know what was happening every night. You know the volume of propofol that was being shipped. You know what was and was not found. And you know Michael Jackson died from propofol intoxication. A natural and probable consequence, a foreseeable, predictable consequence. That is why you don't give propofol in a bedroom. Every doctor agreed on that. There is nothing unusual or unpredictable about what happened. What is unusual or unpredictable is that Michael Jackson lived as long as he did under the care of Conrad Murray in this situation. Ladies and gentlemen, Conrad Murray felt so deeply for Michael Jackson, if he felt so much for his welfare, then I would say this: actions speak far louder than words. Because what Conrad Murray did is continue the propofol, continue the benzodiazepines, when he knew full well what it was doing to him. If, based on no other evidence, you know he knew on May 10th when he recorded that drugged up recording. Ladies and gentlemen, as I started, this was a relationship built on trust. And Michael clearly did trust his life into the hands of Conrad Murray. Not only on a nightly basis for the 2 months you know about, but on June 25th, 2009. Conrad Murray brought the propofol into the house. Conrad Murray administered the propofol. Conrad Murray abandoned his patient. Conrad Murray failed to provide any monitoring equipment, resuscitative equipment, backup personnel. Conrad Murray failed to call 911. Conrad Murray is criminally liable for the death of Michael Jackson, not because it is Michael Jackson, but because Conrad Murray acted with criminal negligence. He was a substantial factor in the death of Michael Jackson. And I ask you to consider all the evidence in this case, to apply the law that the judge gave you, to work together as jurors and go through the evidence. And I trust you'll find that, again, although you have a very important role, at the end of the day, the issue of whether or not Conrad Murray was criminally negligent is not that complicated. This type of medical care has never been seen. This was a pharmaceutical experiment in a bedroom. I trust and I ask that you return with the only right verdict in this case, the only true verdict in this case, and the only just verdict in this case. I ask that you return with a verdict of guilty for the solitary count of involuntary manslaughter based on Conrad Murray's actions and his actions alone. Thank you.
Mr. Walgren, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn to your packet of written instructions, page 9. Page 9, post-trial concluding series. I'll give you a moment. When you go into the jury room to begin your deliberations, your first responsibility is to choose a foreperson. The foreperson should see to it that your discussions are carried on in an organized fashion, that every juror has a fair opportunity to express opinions, and that each juror is treated with respect and dignity. It is your duty to talk with one another and to deliberate in the jury room. You should try to agree on a verdict if you can. Each of you must decide the case for yourself, but you should do so only after you have discussed the evidence with the other jurors. Do not hesitate to change your mind if you become convinced that you are wrong. However, do not change your mind just because other jurors disagree with you. Keep an open mind and freely exchange your thoughts and ideas about this case. Stating your opinions too strongly at the beginning or immediately announcing how you plan to vote may interfere with an open discussion. Please, treat one another courteously. Your role is to be an impartial judge of the facts, not to act as an advocate for one side or the other. Please continue to follow all of my written and verbal admonishments regarding your conduct, as I repeatedly have admonished you throughout these proceedings. Probably more than you wanted to hear me, but nevertheless, you understand it. Do not talk about the case or about any of the people or any subject involved in it with anyone, including but not limited to your spouse or other family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, spiritual leaders or advisors, therapists, spectators, or even total strangers. You must discuss the case only in the jury room and only when all 12 jurors and no other persons are present. Do not discuss your deliberations with anyone other than the other jurors during deliberations in the jury room. Do not access on your own, as a group, or through another person, any dictionary, any Bible, or the internet, or any other resource about this case outside of the evidence and the law presented in this courtroom. Do not access any internet website, including but not limited to any search engine sites such as Google, Ask, Bing, etc., or any social network site such as Facebook, MySpace, etc., or access any blogs, or post any messages or text or tweet anything about this case or the persons or subjects mentioned or involved in it. During the trial, several items were received into evidence as exhibits. You may examine whatever exhibits you think will help you in your deliberations. Certain exhibits will be sent into the jury room with you when you begin to deliberate. If you wish to see any other exhibits, please request them in writing. If you need to communicate with me while you are deliberating, send a note through the bailiff, signed by the foreperson or by one or more members of the jury. To have a complete record of this trial, it is important that you not communicate with me except by a written note. If you have questions, I must contact and speak with the attorneys before I answer. Therefore, it definitely will take a period of time for me to respond. Please remain patient and continue your deliberations while you wait for my answer. I will answer any questions in writing or orally here in the open courtroom. Do not reveal to me or anyone else how the vote stands on the question of guilt or on any other issues in this case, unless I specifically ask you to do so. I reiterate, please do not disclose any numerical breakdown of votes unless I specifically ask. Your verdict must be unanimous. This means that, to return a verdict, all of you must agree to it. Do not reach a decision by the flip of a coin or by any similar act. It is not my role to tell you what your verdict should be. Do not take anything I said or did during the trial as an indication of what I think about the facts, the witnesses, or what your verdict should be. You must reach your verdict without any consideration of penalty or punishment. You must neither consider that subject nor permit it to enter into your deliberations in any way. You will be given guilty and not guilty verdict forms. As soon as all jurors have agreed on a verdict, the foreperson must date and sign the appropriate verdict form and notify the bailiff. Please return any unsigned verdict form. Also, please do not write any notes or comments on any verdict form. As to the alternate jurors, the jury soon will begin deliberating, but you are still alternate jurors and are bound by and must follow all of my earlier written and verbal admonishments about your conduct. Do not talk about the case or about any of the people or any subject involved in it with anyone, not even your family or friends, and not even with each other. Do not have any contact with the deliberating jurors. There'll be an exception to that in just a moment in terms of your being brought tomorrow and leaving this afternoon. Do not decide how you would vote if you were deliberating. Do not form or express an opinion about the issues in this case unless you are substituted for one of the deliberating jurors. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Mrs. Benson, please administer the oath to Deputy Jones.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that you will take charge of the jury and keep them together, that you will not speak to them yourself, nor allow anyone else to speak to them upon any subject connected with this case, except by order of the court, and when they have agreed upon a verdict, you will return them into this court? And further, do you solemnly state that you will take charge of the alternate jurors and keep them apart from the jury while they are deliberating on the cause until otherwise instructed by the court?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Jason Jones.
Counsel, may it be stipulated that the jurors will be deemed to have been thoroughly admonished at this adjournment pursuant to my instructions throughout the case, the instructions earlier this morning as well as those in the afternoon, that the jurors will be deemed to be admonished at each adjournment on every day in which they are deliberating, that the court staff and specifically the Sheriff's Department may supervise the jurors, that the alternate jurors and the regular deliberating jurors can be brought in together and be discharged together by the members of the Sheriff's Department, and that the jurors will be deemed to have been admonished and may be excused during periods of recess, brought back after such recesses and adjournments in the absence of the court, counsel, and the defendant. For the people? Yes, sir. For the defense? Yes. The stipulation is accepted. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 4:03 p.m. We're going to take the evening adjournment at this time with those admonitions ringing in your ears. And the Sheriff's Department will make arrangements with you in terms of further proceedings in this case. And you're beginning deliberations tomorrow morning when it is convenient for you. So have a good evening, everybody. And we'll excuse you for the evening and have you come on back tomorrow. Good evening.